Welcome to Careers, where we dive into the who, what, and how in careers in the theater. And today we're talking to special effects makeup artist Gregory Hewitt. Gregory has been practicing special effects makeup for over 17 years and opened his own business in 2000. Gregory is the director of special effects makeup on the TV series Sid Roth's It's Supernatural with New Day Pictures, and he was also a contestant on the TV show Face Off Season 8. He specializes in the concept, fabrication of, and application of special makeup appliances, props, and all areas of the art form. He's worked on many diverse projects ranging from horror films to TV shows, teaching, theater, opera, live events, and scenario training. And you can check out his website at gregoryfx.com. Welcome, Gregory.
Hey guys, how's everybody doing?
I'm going to ask you in a little bit here, I'm going to ask you about the best or most memorable day you've ever had in being a makeup artist. Now, you don't need to answer about it now, right? But please think about that day or event that you'll always remember, and we're going to talk about that at the end of the interview. But I wanted to put that in your head at the start just so you can think that you can go back to that spot. But what I do want to start with is, when did you know and how did you know that you wanted to be a makeup artist? How did this all start for you?
The turning point for me was watching A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger. I wanted to know exactly how he became that and how just the gore and the spookiness, all of that came together. And it wasn't just the special effects, it was the whole theme, the lighting, I guess the other, not prosthetic, but other special effects in the movie as well. All of it coming together to form this piece of art or magic to me when I was a kid. I mean, today when I look back on it, I'm like, wow, that's that looked a little weird. But when you're a kid, it all looks just surreal. And I wanted to learn how to do it. And so I started, there was no internet. This was back in ancient times, millions of years ago. I had a pet dinosaur. It was so far ago. But I went to a grocery store one day and I happened to notice a magazine called Fangoria. And Fangoria at the time was the magazine for horror film behind the scenes. And every now and then they would show an article on a step-by-step of a special effect makeup they did. And I said, this is how it's done. Oh my gosh, this is how it's done. So that was like just 100% my go-to manual for learning for quite a few years before the internet came along. And a funny story about that is that I was always really good in advanced art. And in the 8th grade, I actually got kicked out of advanced art because I was sculpting a sci-fi creature. And the art teacher decided that it was too scary for the class and that she didn't approve of scary things like that being sculpted. She was more along the lines of wanting to sculpt a historic figure or something like this. And ironically enough, at the end of the school year, we had something called super superlatives, where they vote for a person that excels at something over the entire school. And I got voted and nominated for 2 things. And I won the coolest in school, which was really awesome because I never had it in me. If I had, I didn't know, but I tried to be friends with everybody. I didn't belong to any clique. And so I got voted as the coolest, but I also got voted as the most artistic. And the teacher who had to give me the award for being the most artistic was the art teacher. And so that was I don't know, that was kind of an ironic twist, but yeah,
Well, let me ask you this, Gregory. Let me ask you this. Did you always want to be a makeup artist, or was there something before that? I mean, when you're growing up, did you have that in mind, or that was the point that it kind of turned for you?
No, I actually was doing a beeline toward becoming a podiatrist. I was always really good in science and along with that chemistry, not necessarily basic math. Basic math bored me. But when you put it to use, when you put it into formulations to create things, organic chemistry and biology and the human body anatomy, it fascinated me. And I excelled tremendously in that. So I took off to college to start off to be a podiatrist.
Huh, interesting. All right. Well, we're going to get to education here in a little bit, so I'm curious where that goes. But let me give you a couple other questions leading up to there first. When you decided that this was the direction you want to go, you got your Freddy Krueger on, you got your art going on. What were your first steps that you took to actually start to become a makeup artist? What are some of the early things you did to help you down that path?
The first thing I did was to mimic the stuff I saw in the magazine. I would see, say, for instance, them applying the prosthetics to Freddy Krueger, and I would order stuff out the back of the magazine in the classified ads. Oftentimes, a lot of the professional makeup artists sold appliances and prosthetics and makeup that they actually used in film because it was such a, the 80s was such a, I don't know, such a new up and coming for special effects. That's when all your prosthetics really, really hit the mainstream. And I would see in the magazine, okay, they made this way, and you really didn't have step-by-step instructions. You would have 4 or 5 pictures. So I'm thankful now, but back then you literally had to do trial and error. It was like, okay, well, it looks like he mixed these two together. And then something would crash and burn. You'd be like, oh, well, it wasn't those two things apparently. So you'd have to save up your allowance for another 2 or 3 months till you had the money to order it again and then try again. It was trial and error, repeat, 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 fail, 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 succeed.
And
That's
was there anyone that helped you during this time? Was there a teacher or an adult or even a friend who was helping you, or were you just literally learning it on your own, trial and error?
I was learning it on my own. Uh, my whole background, I guess, family wise, we all grew up to go to college and then go to college and get the big job and then work 40 years plus and retire with a 401k. Um, Art was considered wonderful, but not a means to make a living. So there was not a lot of, I wouldn't say there wasn't a lot of support because there was always way to go, Gregory, and this and that and the other. But there was never a push for me to go into the field of art. It was always more to pursue like the medical field, where I was really good at.
Okay, and I think we hear that a lot from people who are just concerned, and we're going to talk a little bit later about making a living at this. But parents who are concerned about pursuing an artistic career, pursuing something that's not, that they don't understand as well, for the stability, that they don't understand, as a career, and it feels kind of dangerous for them. But I think you've proven, and we'll certainly talk about the fact that you can make a career in this and you can have a good living in it. And we definitely will talk about those details in just a little bit. But I want to go back to the idea of schooling. Did you end up going to school for theater and makeup? Is that what you did? And are there college programs for makeup artists?
I did not go to college to be a special effects makeup artist. There is what you call paper mills or schools that are under the guise of makeup schools. But in reality, if you look at the red tape, you're really just buying all of their products and you're doing rudimentary techniques or outdated techniques, base techniques, and then you're given a piece of paper. You're pretty much not any better off than you were when you first started. So to me, and there are arguably some schools out there that have gotten a little better, like Cinema Makeup School in California is one that actually tries to proactively get their students work. I don't support or negate those schools, but I just don't agree with the practices of most of them. I have actually went for job positions at several of them and turned down my own self turned down, because after I seen the school and the way that the gears turned in the school, I realized that they weren't actually doing what I wanted to do. So I started teaching on my own.
There you go. Well, let me ask you this. Because I agree, and it's really good information to say that there are, and I'll use the word unscrupulous because I think they are. There are some unscrupulous kinds of programs out there who are, as you say, just trying to sell you something or have you buy their materials, and they give you really the basics, but it's not the kind of education that's going to be beneficial to you. But that's different from like actual college theater programs that have makeup classes or makeup courses or things like that. That's a separate issue, yes?
Well, whenever you go to a theater course, your main primary function is to learn how to act or learn about, they combine the history and stage etiquette, stage terminology, which is phenomenal. Um, but they teach you how to performance. With performance, the small little part that's makeup usually is one or two classes that are given to you for like foundation, basic foundations, and basically this, that, and the other. But you're given credit for that, so it counts. It's worth your time and effort to go, because when you get that degree, that credit is worth it. Whereas in, like we said before, in those makeup schools, you get that piece of paper, it's not worth the $72,000 or $80,000 that you paid for it. It's just a piece of paper.
Right, right. Well, then let me ask you this next question is, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer because from what you've been saying, do you have to have a degree to be a makeup artist?
No, no, you do not have to have a degree to be a makeup artist, but here's the twist. If you go to the West Coast, now this is slowly starting to encroach upon the East Coast, but right now it's still with the West Coast, you have to have a license to perform makeup on, especially a union set. There is no license for a makeup artist. There is no degree for a makeup artist. So what are all of us having to do? A lot of us are having to go to cosmetology school for 2 years to get a cosmetology license. So we have something, believe it or not, the rules, SAG, insurance companies out west will accept a cosmetology license to be able to perform makeup on whoever out there. But no, there is not, as far as the East Coast goes, and non-union gigs in the West Coast, you can still get away with not having any type of license, not necessarily a degree, but license.
A license, okay. And how about titles? Are there titles for makeup artists or any kind of accomplishment that you can strive towards or achieve, like a master makeup artist or anything like that? Or is it, it just self-regulates within the community?
It self-regulates, but there is unofficially titles given. There's no type of, I guess, promotion of money or more of this or more credit. There's just a fact of a kind of a buddy system. Like you have a foam runner, somebody who has dedicated most of their training, which is usually self-taught as well, or under an internship, to run foam latex. Because foam latex is such a complicated process that involves a lot of different chemicals and substances mixed together and then baked. There's people who devote their entire career to just running foam. So they're called foam runners or master foam runner, which would be a person who has been doing it for many, many years. And then you have apprentices, who are people that work under the runners. And so that's the title they're given. There is no special pay that goes along with it. Just the fact that we need somebody who runs foam. Okay, get this guy over here. He's a master foam runner. All right. So they bring him over there. And then you have people that just do wigs. And I'm not even sure what the name of that person would be called, but they devoted their whole life to punching hair. Whether it be once a person has the prosthetic on, they need a beard on that prosthetic. Well, they would literally sit there and do a hand lace wig or a hand lace beard and then glue it on. And there's a specialty in that, and that's all they do. Me, on the other hand, I am a special effects makeup artist, and that is my title. That means that I should be able to do each one of those fields. Now, I'm not a master in any of those fields, and if I get to a point where I need help, I will call upon somebody who is specialized in that function, but for minor things, like if they just need a beard for a one-day shoot, I'm not going to hire a professional to come down there for $400 or $500 when I can do it for $50 and just make that one little beard piece, because I know the technique. I just don't do it often enough to consider myself a master.
So very much sounds like a school of hard knocks, and experience really is what counts, working your way up through the field at this point.
It's because Matt, it's secret. Um, the field of special effects makeup has always been considered a secret art. Why, I don't know. Trying to get information from people when I was a lot younger was like getting blood from a stone. They did not want to give up that information because that was their edge.
Hmm.
When you look at all these horror movies that were created, they weren't all created at the same time. In one year, you might have 5. So you've got 5 movies being made, and you've got thousands of special effects makeup artists who are bidding for that one job.
Right.
So not only are you competing with the who you know, but you're also competing with what you know. And a lot of those people hold on to that information, a new technique. For instance, Tinsley, Christian Tinsley came up with Tinsley transfers, and you can get them at makeup stores now, but it was a glue process where we take something we use called Pros-Aid, and he would freeze it. Just by accident, he discovered this. And he's like, wait a minute, if I freeze this, I can keep its shape. It's already made of glue. I can dissolve the edge on the person. This is perfect. And he was so scared of losing that recipe that he actually went out and got a patent for it.
Wow. Wow.
So that tells you just how far people will go to keep a secret in the industry, and it's simply because of the demand.
Yeah. Well, here's a really interesting question for you. And it was really interesting to hear you talk about the potential of being a podiatrist and looking at the science and the medical of it. I know that anatomy is a huge part of what you do, and understanding of anatomy is very important in what you're doing. And art is also important. But what are some of the other special skills or training that would be beneficial for someone to pursue if they want to go into special effects makeup? What are things that people should learn or should study or should research?
One of the most underrated things, but most important things, is color theory.
Hmm.
You've got to know what colors go well with the human eye. For instance, my backdrop behind me, I'm using the teal and the orangey yellows. Those 2 colors work beautifully to the eye. Same thing on screen. A lot of the times, we as special effects makeup artists will refer to amphibian guides, mammal guides, fish guides, and we will mimic the colors and the patterns of a frog. So the next time you see a sci-fi creature and you're like, oh my gosh, that color pattern is amazing. How in the world did they come up with that? Chances are there's a frog in nature that had that same pattern, and that makeup artist just copied it over. And that honestly is what sells. You can have a beautiful makeup job, a beautiful creature, and have a horrible paint job and ruin the whole thing. So color theory is one of the main things you need to learn right off the bat. I mean, before you learn all of the complicated silicones and foam latexes, I would say learn your colors, learn your color wheel. A lot of people don't even know their color wheel. They don't know, what a complementary color is, or even, buddy colors. They don't know that yet. So basic art classes, if you're in college, take some art classes on painting and learn your colors. Another thing is chemistry. And I know there's a lot of people, probably your students, are going, oh my gosh, but no, the chemicals we use are real, and some of them are highly dangerous chemicals. For instance, acetone or methanol, or as far as foam latexes go, latex itself, liquid latex, foam latex, latex solids, silicones. You've got platinum silicones, or you've got tin-based silicones. What reacts with that? What causes it not to set? Why doesn't it set? There's a lot of makeup artists out there that they know not to mix a tin silicone and a platinum silicone together, However, they don't know why. So taking a chemistry class will help you learn the why, and that will make sense of what you're doing, other than just watching somebody do something and then just copying what they do and never knowing the reason behind it. So chemistry is another one. And of course, anatomy. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize is anthropology.
Hmm. Okay.
We use a lot of time morphing. We'll use features from early man, you know, and then we will use features from a science fiction type creature, and then we will blend them together. If you don't know your anthropology, if you don't know how things formed over time, how different animals, they just, why did they have a fin on the side of their head? If you don't understand that and you go and you sculpt a creature and you just throw a fin on the side of the head, there's going to be a reader out there or a watcher, depending on whether you're doing a comic or a movie or a horror, whatever you're doing. They're going to say, why is that fin on the side of your head? You can't just do stuff for cosmetic reasons only. There has got to be a reason why that fin developed on the side of the head of that creature. And they're like, oh, well, it lives in the water. Okay, well, it breathes through its head, through that fin. That's a gill. So you see how it starts to add up. Classes like that, that you honestly, when you're in them, you're like, why in the world do I need to know why this butterfly and this butterfly, when they mate, they form this new colored butterfly? There's a reason behind that when you get out in the real world and you actually put that stuff to use. When you're in class and you're just seeing the stuff in the book, you're not really putting it to use. You're just kind of regurgitating what you're reading. But when you're in the real world and you're put to the test and you have to use it, you have to apply what you've learned, then it really makes sense. You're like, oh my gosh, yeah, if I take this shape, and I put them together and I get, all of a sudden I get a triangle. Now I know why I've got a triangle. Yeah,
So, yeah,
it's funny.
yeah, it's really interesting to hear kind of the spread of how this information is used and is useful, not least of which we can talk about chemistry for safety reasons. I'm sure there's a lot of safety issues that you got to be aware of, and chemistry is going to help you know that. The anthropological stuff has a lot to do with storytelling, as you're saying. You've got to have the story make sense, and if you don't understand all the steps that get you there and that make the things make sense, then someone's going to call you on it. It's going to be a problem. So let me ask you this, because we're still kind of working our way towards that profession. So someone who wants to do this job and they want to prepare, they want to get themselves into it. What kind of opportunities should they pursue in like internships or volunteering or things like that? Are those beneficial?
They are, and actually, they're better than any school. And I may get flack on that. I may get some people to send me some dirty emails, but and I'm not talking about theater school. I'm talking about special effects makeup. There's a difference. But as far as a special effects makeup artist, finding somebody to work with or work under is your best route, because first off, you're going to get the connections. It's a who you know business up until you get to a certain point when you're first starting out. Then you intern and you start taking on small jobs. A lot of people are greedy and they're like, well, I won't work for, you know, just paying for my materials. I want this amount of money. They want the money that a person who's been working 10 years in the business is making. And I see that a lot, especially with a lot of people that I train now. They don't understand why they can't get paid this huge amount of money. And I often ask them, because they're still in the internship phase, did you buy the materials? Well, no, you're supplying them. Okay. Did you make the appliances? No, you made the appliances. Okay. What exactly did you do? Well, I applied the piece. Okay. So you want to get full credit and you want to get paid top dollar for just applying a piece. And they're like, oh, now I see the difference. There's a lot of stuff that goes on before a makeup artist ever goes to set. And as far as internships go, it's kind of tough because there's not that many of us working special effect makeup artists full time. A lot of artists are working part time, and then they have another job in another field or this, that, and the other. So I've got a waiting list myself, and I try to accept as many people as I can, but I can only accept so many people. And I take them to work with me. I put them in front of a real set, a real live working set in my shop. They're working with the stuff that we are going to put on actors. They interact with actors. So I try to do it exactly as if they were an assistant, not an intern. I don't do shadowing. I don't believe in somebody just standing there and watching me do all this work, this and that and the other. I don't do that. If you're going to do an internship with me, you're going to work, you're going to learn, and I'm going to treat you as if you're going to do this as a career. But other than internship, practice yourself every single day. I don't think there's one person in the last class that I taught that could raise their hand and honestly say that they practiced at least 20 minutes a day.
Mm.
20 minutes is not a long time at all. I mean, most people will hit their snooze button for 20 minutes. Think about it. 20 minutes. Well, think of it this way. How serious are you about your career? You want to do this the rest of your life and you're not willing to devote 20 minutes? That's how long it takes for you to go through your Instagram feed. You know, if you can't even do that, then you should look for something else, because you have to be that determined and that passionate about something, because this is a lot of it is self-taught. A lot of it is trial and error on your own. And if you're not that disciplined to do that, then you're not going to succeed.
Yeah. Let me ask you about some other skills here real quick, because I'm hearing obviously dedication, obviously being self-motivated is big in this field as well. But how about business training? Do you need to know a little bit of business training in order to do this? And also things like organization and being a people person and being a good communicator. Are those skills that are valuable or necessary in this as well?
Absolutely. You cannot work on a film set without getting along with your fellow crew member or your actors, or when you're even trying to get work. My degree from East Carolina, I double majored in electronic media and public relations, in the field, all fall under the field of communication. I was taught how to present myself in front of the public electronically, or TV news reporting, that kind of thing. And it paid off so well, because now when I walk into a room, even if it's completely crowded, I've got the skills. And I remember us getting thrown right into a group of 300 kids in these big, huge classrooms, standing there having to do a debate. And I remember having to control the room, or how to gain control of the room. And that's the same thing you have to do whenever you're in the film world is called organized chaos on a film set, because it looks like chaos, everything is going. But if you truly step back and look at it, it's actually more or less a symphony. You got all kinds of different things, but they all come together to perform this beautiful tune. So I have got to be able to speak up and let the lighting people know what lighting I need, or what lighting are they going to have on the set that I need to incorporate into my makeup. I need to ask the sound, where in the world are they going to, is their mic going to go? You know, it's important as far as costuming and the prosthetic edge goes. As far as the actors go, when they're sitting in my chair, do you want to be a makeup artist that sits there and lets the actor play on their phone the whole time, and you have to stop and keep pausing, and then the director will walk in and say, why is it taking so long? And the actor immediately brings down their phone, and they're like, well, I don't know, he's just taking a long time. Or do you want to be the person that says, hey, look, I tell you what, you can work on your phone after we get this done, but let's go ahead and get your makeup on. And then once we get it done, you can go in the green room and you can put your makeup on. So learn how to control a room, learn how to control your audience, but also learn how to interact with your audience in a friendly way. Those people who are introverts and they brag about being introverts, oh, I'm introverted, you know, I'm introverted, I don't, but I'm a beautiful, amazing artist. Well, you might be an amazing artist, but if you can't get your work out there, if you can't get on social media and advertise, nobody is going to know you exist. So you have to have some extrovert in you in order to bring on customers, to bring on work, because if we don't know you're out there, we can't hire you. Bottom line.
Well, and that leads me to my next question, and it's a great setup. You know, they've done their internships, they've done their homework, they've done the work. They want to go out and get a job now. So who do you work for? Who hires you, and how do you apply for these jobs? For a lot of these people starting out, no one's ever told them. They have no idea. So how does that happen? Who are you looking to get hired by, and how does that process work?
One of the things I did was I went back to college at UNC Charlotte for the sole purpose not to get a degree. I already had a degree, but for connections. I knew that the professors that worked there had to have worked in the professions in the theater field. And I also went back to learn terminology because I knew that theater terminology crossed over into film terminology. Stage left, stage right, all of that is the same on a film set. So I went back there for just to get my name out and to find somebody, a connection, a link. And I found that the most important thing in this business on getting a job is who you know.
Hmm.
And this lady, very nice costume lady, seen me. I would go above and beyond. That's another thing I want to bring that in as a side note. You have to stand out in this business. You're going to be called a show off. You're going to be called, oh, look at him. You know, he's just doing, you know, wait, over, you know, teacher pet or whatever you want to call it. Ignore those people. They're not going to go anywhere in life. They're going to be the people that always want to bring other people down. I went to school dressed in film quality prosthetics. I walked on campus in film ready prosthetics. When they had a blood and guts day where people wore the little cuts on the side of their faces, I went in dressed as a demon and I ripped a girl's face off and had it frying in a frying pan. That's the difference in what I did versus what somebody else did. And that's what's going above and beyond, but it got noticed. And that was the whole point. And this woman, she got in touch with a theater director, or actually an opera director downtown. And that woman called me and said, how would you like to put makeup on some actors for an opera? And it was called Tales of Hoffman was the name of the opera. And I said, absolutely. I always learn in this business, you always say yes and you learn how to do it later. And I went down there, and as a crew, I had friends. Nobody knew how to do makeup but me. And I went down there and literally just delegated, you know, boom, 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 boom. And we got through it. And then I got called back to do Pirates of Penzance. And then I got called back again to do Hansel and Gretel. And then some people who were out in the audience who filmed movies actually seen my work on stage. And after, the difference in me was I was so used to blending that edge, getting that edge perfect, that in the theater world, usually you're putting makeup on for the people in the nosebleed seats. So the edges are not that perfect. And also these prosthetics have to be used night after night after night. So they got a lot thicker edge just to hold up. And a lot of the after the play or after the opera was over with, these filmmakers walked up to the witch, for instance, on Hansel and Gretel and said, wow, your makeup looks fantastic. I can't tell where the prosthetic ends and where your skin begins. Who did your makeup? And boom, there goes your first job doing an independent film. And so that's how I grew.
So very much networking absolutely is a big part of it, and getting your work seen, getting your name out there and your work seen, especially in these days of social media and Instagram and Twitter and all that other stuff. As you said, there's no reason that you shouldn't be doing your best work and getting that work out to be seen. And then I love what you said, Gregory, about saying yes, right? You know, it may not be a really high paying gig, but it's experience and it's network. And that is something in this particular business, it sounds like that's how you make your business grow, that you've got to be out there and say yes and do the things that need to be done when the opportunity arises.
Right. There's an adage that Tom Savini said. Tom Savini did a lot of the horror movies in the 80s. And he said, the more you do, the more you get to do. He was a special effects makeup artist. He was a photographer in Vietnam. So he got to see all the gore up close. And so when he went into makeup, he actually went into the film business to be an actor and didn't get very far to begin with. He didn't get very far. So he decided, well, what else can I do while I'm here? And somebody said, well, can you apply this makeup? Same thing happened to Dick Smith, who was we could pretty much call him the father of makeup, the one who did the Exorcist makeup. Same thing. He went to Hollywood to become an actor. Well, people ask you, well, can you do this? And they asked him, can you be a stuntman? He said, absolutely. And he ended up being one of the only special effects makeup artists. When you see people getting sliced in the head with an axe, he's the one holding the foam axe that he's swinging towards the actor, because who else is going to know better? If they get a stuntman, you can direct the stuntman, and I'm sure stuntmen can do exactly what you tell them to do. However, if you created the prop, you know how the prop works. What better person to have than you out there? So, and he also invented the technique, since he was doing that, of taking a real weapon like a real axe, and you would see it slide across the top and break something in one shot, and then they do a quick cutaway, and then they would replace the real axe with a fake axe right at the moment of coming down. So when you see the real axe hit something and the sparks come off, that's real sparks. That's a real axe hitting something metal. However, one split second later, there's a foam axe going into the person's head. He invented stuff like that, but he was the stuntman. He was the person doing the entire effect, from building it to performing with it. And it's those kind of things, if he had not agreed to do them, if he had said, no, 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 all I do is the makeup, then his career would have been a lot more narrow.
That's a great point, and the willingness to do what needs to be done, and to say yes, and then do your best at it. You know, you may not know how to do it, but like you said, go work, go learn, go figure out what you can figure out. But the next thing I want to talk about now is we're negotiating now. We might have an opportunity to get a job. What's the average pay for jobs like this? What's the pay range that people should ask about?
Uh, that is in itself is a good question. A lot of your independent films are going to go flat rate. Flat rate means that it's either $100 or $200 or $500, whatever their budget is. Every single person, from the cameraman to the boom guy, is getting paid the exact same thing. You've got that. And then you've got something I don't really like, but I did it in the beginning, and I'm sure a lot of other people have to do it in the beginning, is screen credit. And you've got to be very careful with that, though, because I got taken advantage of plenty of times. What screen credit means is I will do the work for you. I'll buy my own materials. I'll put in my own time. You won't pay me a dime, but you will give me the beautiful credit in the rolling at the end of the film. And then when that movie gets sold, everybody who's watching that, you're betting that a big time producer is going to see your name in the credits and like what you did in the movie and hire you. So you're betting on yourself as far as that one little screen credit in exchange for paying for everything you did on the movie. The problem with that is that a lot of the independent films, when you first start out, are just that. They're very, very, very small, and they end up in mom's basement with their buddies coming over and sitting down and having a beer and going, look at this cool movie I made. And you're sitting back trying to pay your rent and knowing that you scrounged together $1,200 just to make this creature for this film, and it's never going to be seen. The producer and the director are never going to take it to film festivals. Nothing happens to it. That happened so many times with me as a kid that it almost bankrupted me. And I got to a point where I just had to end up saying, Gregory, what are you worth? You're working 2 and 3 weeks just to make this one mask for a horror film. Think about that. That's 3 weeks worth of labor plus the materials. And you're going to do this for free in the hopes that somebody is going to see your name, and there's not even any contract or any promise. So at that point, I decided to start charging. And I found out that a lot of those people that were the mom's basement watching the movies people disappeared.
Hmm.
almost automatically. And then I also found out that people, and this is a mistake that a lot of young FX artists make, is that they don't realize that they're actually worth something. And so they do this work for free, and they're like, well, I'm just not good enough to get paid for it yet. They don't realize their own worth. And I looked online because the wonderful internet had come about. And I started saying, well, special effects makeup artists pay in this state, that state, this state. And I started averaging them together. And I said, okay. So when somebody else would send in a bid, I would say, well, this is what I'll get paid for. And I also would put a contract in. So I knew that I was going to get paid first. And the reason I did that was because when I first started charging, at the end of the film, I still wouldn't get paid. They'd be like, oh, we ran out of money. I'm sorry, we had to pay for the camera. We got this high definition red camera, and that was so important. And I said, wait a minute, we did a horror film. Yes, the camera is important, but you did a horror film. That means that 90% of a horror film is special effects makeup. What? I don't understand. And so I implemented a 50-50 system. And on real sketchy projects where it looked like you would never get paid, I implemented a 70-30 system. And so what would happen is, since all of my work, or I would say most of my work, is done before I ever even step on a film set, making the prosthetics, doing the life casts, all that is done before I ever even step on set. Why not get paid for it? So you pay me 70% up front. And then when I finish, the last day I'm on set, not when the project is done, but the last day that I am on set, I get a check for the remaining 30%. And a legitimate producer or director, they would negotiate the percentage, but they would end up agreeing, and you would sign the contract. So you knew you were getting paid for your materials. So if they did end up filing bankruptcy or losing all their money at the end of the picture, all their backers, you still got all your materials paid for, and you didn't lose that. So you lost your labor, yes, but you didn't lose all that money for the materials. And that's how I ended up in the payments.
That's such great advice. And it's something that took me a long time to learn as an artist as well. And that is, people will pay you what you think you're worth. And if you are willing to do it for free, they are willing to let you do it for free. So it's great advice. It's great business advice. And to have that kind of business sense doing this thing is never a bad idea. So thank you for that. But the other thing that I wanted to touch on, because you talked about it, and it takes me where I want to go next, and that has to do with the kind of preparation and homework you need to do before you even start the job per se, which is a lot. I mean, what are some of the preps and the pre-shoot work or the pre-show work that you have to do, either as design or build or any of that stuff?
On a perfect set, and I've been on very few in my independent days before I got into the professional world, but on those sets, you really want to get with the camera guys and the lighting guys, and you want to find out exactly where you're going to shoot this shot from. And that determines, is this going to be a close shot? Can I run tubing right out the pants leg? Or is it going to be a long shot where I have to just hide everything, bury the cable? There's so many things that go in positioning of that camera versus the positioning of the makeup. You do not want that camera to be on an angle where no matter how good your edge is, you could see it with the lighting. So you also go up to the lighting guys as well, and you're like, well, what colors are you going to use? If they're using a red light and you're using red blood, you're not going to see any blood at all on that actor. So you would go with something darker. Sometimes you would even go with almost a black blood if they're using a red light. So it's things like that. I've had monsters where I've created them, and then when they walked out onto the scene, the producer, the director, the lighting guy, nobody had time to come and see me. They just said, we just want, just do whatever you can do, Greg. In the makeup chair, they looked beautiful. I mean, beautiful. They walk out there, go up under the lights, they look like a completely different creature from what you made. And it's because the lights change the entire look of the creature from shadowing on up. Um, Another thing that I have to do is I like to get with the actors. There are some actors who are allergic to foam latex. There are some actors that are allergic to some of the products we use. Their eyes will blow up, swell up, and you've got to know these things. Because if you get an actor that just shows up the day of filming, like they usually do on very, very low budget indie films, and all of a sudden that actor bursts out with, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I'm allergic to foam latex," and all of your prosthetics are foam latex, what are you going to do? There's absolutely nothing you can do at that point. You can't even pull stuff out of your toolkit because you've already spent 3 weeks sculpting and designing and prepping these appliances that this actor can't wear. So you like to get with your actors and learn what they're allergic to. Or I also like to know if the actors have worn prosthetics before, because I love character actors. A character actor is somebody who enjoys the prosthetic process. They enjoy it being put on them. They enjoy bringing these characters to life. A lot of indie films, now it's not so big with the pro films, but a lot of indie films just go for the model types, the GQ types, and they get these preppy people sitting in their chair, and they're like, "Oh, can you just not put any glue right here?" Or I really don't want you to put any glue. I literally had a woman tell me one day not to mess with her hair. She had just had it colored. And now she was supposed to be shot in the forehead, and she did not allow any blood at all to be put in her hair. So for the scene, we had to have a hat. We ended up putting a hat on her very carefully, and then putting blood slime so the slime wouldn't run, but it looked like blood, and then on her face. It's stuff like that that you just don't even want to deal with on the day of a set. So know your actors, know your lighting guys, your camera guys. Also like to do background on the actual project directors, like if directors don't need to be your friend, but you don't want to work for a lousy director. I remember this one girl passed out on a film set on an indie film. It was a good film, but she passed out and she fell and she hit her head, and she went to the hospital. Well, the first AD walked out there and gave this beautiful, heartwarming, compassionate speech. Look, this is a film, and we don't want anybody to get hurt. So it's hot down here, which a lot of film sets are. It's very hot. These are not the ideal conditions. We have to turn the fans off for filming, so it's going to get even hotter. If you feel faint, the whole speech was very eloquent and beautiful. And he got finished and he walked away. Then the director walks out. And the first thing the director does is throw out 3 F-bombs about how lousy the project is going to go if idiots keep falling out and passing. I mean, terrible, terrible speech, motivational speech. I mean, it made me feel like just walking off set right then and there and never turning around and coming back. So I like to work with directors who believe in the entire team. They're not just in it for themselves and just get mad and angry. I like the director that will take you behind the scenes and say, "Hey, look, tell you what, Gregory, instead of doing that, could we possibly do this?" You don't want a director who's going to stand in front of the actors and the lighting directors and the sound people and scream and holler whenever something that is absolutely not your fault happens, but it's in your area, your department, and they just scream bloody murder. You don't want that, because if a director can't handle their cool under fire, they're not going to handle their cool during the whole project. You don't need that.
Right. And it sounds like the really solid piece of advice is to do your homework on the people that you're going to work for as well. That it's, find out what you can, get some intel and information. Don't walk onto the set blindly, because you're right. If you're going to spend that kind of time and that kind of effort, you don't want to be miserable in what you're doing. There's enough other things that you are dealing with on that set without having to deal with personality types as well.
Everybody's under pressure on a film set.
Right. Right.
You got to remember that, but it's beautiful to work with people who handle pressure well.
Well, then that takes us right back to the beginning, which is the question I asked you at the top, which is, what is the best day that you've had, or your most memorable day you've had being a makeup artist? What stands out for you? What was that day like?
The best day of my entire career happened with a little boy named Elijah. I was I had just come off of that stint with Face Off, this and that and the other, and his parents had seen me, and he liked the show as well, and they had seen me on the show Face Off and contacted me through Facebook and said, Elijah has a rare form of throat cancer and is passing away. And as a last wish, we're putting in the community is putting on a Halloween party for him because he wants Halloween and he wasn't going to make it to Halloween. So, and I was already, wide open with Sid Roth working on TV show, this, that, and the other. I stopped everything. And I also asked another actor friend, made him up like the Joker as well, full prosthetics. And I went over to his house, and there's a lot of makeup schools that'll say, oh, for makeup you always want to have somebody sitting in a chair, perfect lighting and blah 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 blah. In the real world, it doesn't happen anything near that way. This is how our makeup setup went. He couldn't be moved off the couch, so he laid on the couch, and I laid right beside him on the couch, and I applied full prosthetics on him while he laid there, just as gentle and peaceful and quiet as I could be. And halfway through that, he started asking me about the show Face Off, and he said, did you win? And I said, no, Elijah, I didn't win. I said, a girl beat me. I said, can you believe that? And he was about 10 or 11 years old. So he's like, a girl beat you? I said, yeah, a girl beat me. How about that? And he said, what happened? I said, the judges just liked her makeup, I guess, better than mine. And the only time during the whole entire makeup process, because he was very tired, he just went through another surgery, but the only time during the process where he actually opened his eyes, and he had the most gorgeous blue eyes you'd ever seen, he looked straight at me and he said, whispered, the judges should have opened their eyes. Mm. And then he closed his eyes and he never opened them again the rest of the time that I applied his makeup. And that sent shivers down my spine that during all of this little boy wasn't going to live but several more weeks. He was more concerned with me than he was what was going on with himself. And I was like, my gosh, how much do we actually take for granted in this world? But after I got his makeup on, one of the football players, Cam Newton, showed up, and NBC News was there, and every single house in that entire housing development made their houses up like Halloween, and were giving out candy. Even a Domino's truck showed up with, I don't know how many hundreds of chocolate lava cakes in the back. I mean, it was the most amazing day and of my entire career. And I'll never forget it.
And you know what I love about that, Gregory, is that it's not about some amazing film set you were on. It's not about some amazing product or discovery made, but it was about the connection you had with someone and the ability to use your art to make someone's life a little bit better. And how exciting is that? I mean, isn't that really what should get us out of bed in the morning every day?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that propels me to teaching my students, is I always tell them, and you can ask any of them, and they'll tell you my line that I always give is, I want you to be better than me. I don't want you to settle. I want you to be better than me. Like, do what I did, but do it better. That's why I'm teaching you. Go out there, and the day that you walk that stage, I'll be there to applaud you in the crowd. I've told every one of them that.
Well, I think you might have just answered my last question for me, Greg, which is this. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to someone who wants to pursue special effects as a makeup artist? Is that what you'd say there, or do you have something else you'd share with people?
I would say, don't give up. You're going to be met with, because it's not a traditional career, So your family, you know, and they have the best intentions in the world, they do. But a lot of people do not understand non-traditional careers. And so you're going to get a lot of negativity. You're going to get a lot of doubt thrown your way about, well, you know, you're only famous when you're dead. Well, it's not about becoming famous. I don't, if you're going into this business to become famous, you need to look at becoming an actor, because I'm behind the scenes. You won't ever see me, and rarely do you sit and watch, unless it's a Marvel film, to watch the 5 seconds at the end of the credits. But rarely will you ever know that I actually took part in that film, unless you sit through 10 minutes of credits and then you see a tiny little microscopic font that has my initials in it. So it's not about that. For me, it's the creation. It's whenever I start out with a live cast and then I sculpt. And once I finish with the sculpt, I turn it into a prosthetic, and then I apply the prosthetic on an actor, and that actor walks in front of that camera, and it brings something that started in my mind to life. That for me is that's the reward. Seeing it go from nothingness to an idea to something solid that you can touch and feel and interact with. So don't give up. That's the best advice I can give. And if you do give up, then this was not your passion. This was not meant for you.
What fantastic advice. Gregory, thank you so much. It was so great talking to you. Thank you for your time. And thank you for sharing what it's like to have a career as a makeup artist.
You're very welcome, Matt. My best to everybody out there in the world.